Mercy and peace to you through Jesus. Amen. Our text today is from Hebrews chapter 11. And in it, people are commended, these ancients, these people of old. Noah, Abraham, Sarah, for example. And these are people who lived by faith. Hebrews chapter 11 is called a hall of fame of faith, filled with many people and examples, and each name has a story to it. I challenge you today, when you go home, finish out the rest of Hebrews 11. What we read just involved like 5 different characters. The rest of Hebrews 11 involves many more. Pay attention to that reading and ask yourself, how many of these names do I know, and do I know the stories attached to these names? It'll be a challenge for you, but I might test your biblical literacy or illiteracy, and to see really whether this story of the Bible, this big story of which these people make just little parts of that story happen, has become your story. Because really these people, Noah, Abraham, Sarah, etc., are your spiritual forebears. And their stories are like your story. It's all part of the same thing. Our vision statement is to connect people with Jesus Christ and each other. And I think that each other part also involves those ancient people, those people who have died in faith and have left us a legacy, have stories connected to their names. Do you know these stories? So Hebrews 11, go home and read it. It's my challenge for you today. These are people who lived in faith. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for. Repeat that after me. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, and the conviction of things not seen. The conviction of things not seen. A beautiful definition of what faith is. What are people who live in faith? How are their lives marked? They're hopers. They live in hope. Noah, constructing an ark, was living in hope that his family would be saved. Abraham, moving from a strange country because the Lord had called him, was putting one foot in front of the other, not knowing where he was going, except he was being energized by hope that God's call was real. Sarah, being told in her advanced age that she would give birth to a child, believed it in hope. People who follow God, who live in faith, are hopers. And it's not a hope as in like, I wish it would happen, or I guess I should hope for it. 50-50 chance, we'll see, nothing left to lose. No, this is the assurance of things hoped for. This is a hope that is assured. They base their life on it. They act on it. They're energized by it. People who live in faith are also dreamers. Some verses from Hebrews 11. For he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. For people who speak thus make it clear that they're seeking a homeland. But as it is, they desire a better country, that is, a heavenly one. There's this sense of dreaming that they're aiming for something better. They dream. They know it can be better. Now, it says here that they didn't quite receive what they had hoped for in Hebrews chapter 11. In one sense they did. Noah did receive salvation of his family in the ark. They were saved. Isaac was conceived in the womb of Sarah. But still, even after Noah's family was saved, and now the waters had receded, I can imagine Noah's heart being very forlorn, very defeated almost. This is what salvation looks like, the rest of the world dead and I'm all alone. They desired something better. They lived always dreaming, never content with this broken world. Connected to that are people who live in faith are strangers in exile. They consider themselves aliens. Hebrews 11 again. These all died in faith, not having received the thing promised, But having seen them and greeted them from afar, and having acknowledged that they were strangers and exiles on earth. Noah still alone, even in his own family, after the flood. Sarah, who never had that joy of young motherhood. I see some young mothers over here. We're going to baptize Lila. Young mothers get together and share the ordeal or the beautiful experience of pregnancy and being a young mother. Sarah never had that opportunity, probably always envied it. Now it's come upon her at a very advanced age, but I bet she was not included in those young mothers' circles. She was probably gossiped about, though. She was a stranger and an exile, even while being maybe a celebrity, something odd and interesting in her hometown. And Abraham followed the Lord, but all he had to his name when he died was a burial plot that he purchased for his wife Sarah, and he lived in tents. Always seeking, always hoping, dreaming, considering yourself an exile here. That's what it is to live in faith. Are you relating a little bit to these people? Maybe not. Maybe you can relate to this instead. Hebrews 11 goes on to say that if they had been thinking of that land from which they had gone out, they would have had opportunity to return. Do you spend a lot of time thinking of that land from which you came out? Because it's when we begin to think there that the temptation comes upon us, the opportunity comes to return back to that old land. Not just thinking about it, but then acting upon it and going back to what was old and maybe even comfortable, even if it's still broken and not quite right. Abraham could have thought of all the relatives he was leaving behind in the land of Ur when God called him to a new land. Noah could have thought of all the friends and people of his village that he could just become part of again instead of being the laughingstock, the kook guy building an ark. Sarah could have become comfortable thinking of those decades that she had kind of reconciled herself to be, that she would die childless, that her womb was barren. Spent a lot of mental energy and many decades reconciling herself to that fact, and now old facts are sometimes comfortable to wear. They could have gone back there. It's easy to think of that old country. They could have returned. No more hoping for me. I'm content with what is. What is. It's the reality. This conviction of things not seen. I'm convinced of what I do see. I'm convinced of what I can manage and manipulate and purchase and own, figure out. That's what I'm convinced of. I'll take care of my life, thank you very much. No more hope for me. What is. No more dreaming. In fact, you almost get a little cynical of dreamers when you return to that old land. Always pointing out what could be. Again, you're convinced of what you see, what you know to be real. No more rooms for dream, they just waste energy. No more seeking something better. No more living like a exile. I've gone back to the old land. Granted, my life ain't perfect. A lot of things I don't like about it, but it's what I know. And I'll stay here, thank you very much. No more hoping, dreaming, seeking, being convinced of what you don't see. It's all about what is, what you can see. Jesus in our gospel lesson said that those who, this idea of thinking of the old land and returning to it, he says, don't seek after what the world seeks. This old land, the world, what are they thinking of and what are they returning to? What are they constantly seeking for? They are looking for food, drink, clothing, life, adding hours to our day.